Commander Jake Morrison had been staring at supply reports for 3 hours when the red alert klaxon nearly gave him a heart attack. The coffee mug slipped from his hands, shattering on the concrete floor of NORAD's underground command center. He'd been working late shifts for 2 weeks, and his nerves were already shot from too much caffeine and not enough sleep. The massive screens around the command center suddenly blazed to life, showing wave patterns and data streams that Jake had never seen before. Officers scrambled to their stations, their chairs scraping against the floor as everyone tried to figure out what was happening. Lieutenant Amy Brooks rushed over from the communications station, her face pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. She was young, maybe 25, and had only been assigned to the Deep Space Monitoring Division 6 months ago. Most of the time, her job was boring, listening to empty static from the void between stars. "Sir, you really need to look at this," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "The quantum array picked something up about 4 hours ago. It's not natural background radiation or space junk. This is definitely artificial." Jake felt his stomach drop. For decades, scientists had wondered if humanity was alone in the universe. They'd built massive listening stations, sent signals into space, and searched for any sign of intelligent life. Most people had given up hope of ever finding anything. "What kind of artificial?" Jake asked, following Amy back to her workstation. The screens showed complex waveforms and mathematical patterns that looked unlike anything in their databases. "It's encrypted, sir. But the computer has been working on it all night. The translation algorithm finally cracked it about 20 minutes ago." Amy's fingers trembled as she pulled up the decoded message on her screen. Jake leaned closer, squinting at the text. The words made his blood run cold. It wasn't the friendly, "greetings from space" message that scientists had always hoped for. Instead, it read like a declaration of war from some unknown enemy. The translation was broken and incomplete, but the threatening parts came through clearly. Whoever sent this message was promising destruction and death. They specifically mentioned human worlds, which meant these aliens knew about Earth and probably other human colonies too. How long ago was this sent? Jake asked, his mind racing through the implications. Based on the signal delay and our calculations of where it came from, probably about 6 months ago. It's been traveling through space this whole time, and we just happened to pick it up. 6 months. That meant these aliens had been planning something against humanity for half a year. Jake grabbed the secure phone that connected directly to Pentagon leadership. His hands were steady now, training had kicked in over the initial shock. General Mike Torres answered on the second ring. Torres was old-school military, a man who had fought in 3 different wars and never backed down from a fight. When Jake explained the situation, the general's response was immediate and harsh. "Morrison, I want every available ship ready for combat within 72 hours. If some alien species thinks they can threaten Earth, they're about to learn why that's a bad idea." The line went dead. Jake looked around the command center, watching dozens of officers and technicians working frantically at their stations. In a few hours, this information would reach the President, Congress, and military commanders around the world. Humanity was about to mobilize for war against an enemy they knew nothing about. What Jake didn't know was that the message had never been meant for Earth at all. Billions of miles away, in a star system humans had never visited, an alien commander named Veltar was desperately trying to save his people from brutal raiders. His plea for help had been sent to what he thought was a military alliance, but a broken navigation system had misdirected the signal. Veltar was still waiting by his communications console, hoping that someone, anyone, would respond to his call for assistance. His planet was under attack, his ships were outgunned, and time was running out. He had no idea that his message for help had been received as a threat of war, or that the most dangerous military force in the galaxy was now preparing to hunt him down. The misunderstanding that would change everything had already begun. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the observation deck of the massive space station orbiting Earth's moon, staring out at something that shouldn't have been possible. 3 days ago, there had been empty space beyond Luna's orbit. Now, hundreds of warships stretched as far as the eye could see, their running lights creating a constellation of deadly stars against the black void. She had been in the military for 30 years, had commanded fleets during the Mars Colony Wars and the asteroid belt conflicts. But nothing had prepared her for this. Earth's governments had pulled every available ship from across the solar system, patrol boats from Jupiter's moons, heavy cruisers from the asteroid mining stations, even experimental vessels that were still in testing phases. The numbers were staggering. 793 ships of war, ranging from small destroyers that could take out pirate bases to massive dreadnoughts capable of cracking planets. The flagship Retribution alone was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to level entire cities. Captain Tom Bradley walked up beside her, holding a data pad with the final fleet roster. He was a good officer, someone she'd worked with during the Titan Rebellion 5 years earlier. His face was grim as he reviewed the numbers. "Admiral, this is insane," he said quietly. "We've got ships here that were supposed to be protecting trade routes, defending colony worlds, even some that were in dry dock for repairs. Command pulled everything." Lisa nodded, understanding his concern. Earth had basically left the entire solar system defenseless to assemble this fleet. If the aliens attacked somewhere else while they were gone, there would be nothing to stop them. "What's our total firepower assessment?" she asked. Tom scrolled through his data pad. 47,000 Marines ready for ground assault. Full nuclear arsenal, both tactical warheads and planet crackers. Enough conventional weapons to fight a war for 6 months straight. The weapons officers estimate we could glass an entire continent if needed. The phrase made Lisa uncomfortable, but she understood the reality of the situation. These aliens had threatened to burn human worlds and show no mercy. Earth's response had to be overwhelming and decisive. She walked back toward the bridge of the Retribution, her boots echoing on the metal deck plates. The ship was buzzing with activity as thousands of crew members prepared for humanity's first interstellar war. In the corridors, she passed young officers who had trained their entire careers for battles against other humans. Now they would face something completely unknown. The tactical center was a maze of holographic displays showing ship positions, supply lines, and projected battle scenarios. Military strategists had worked around the clock to plan for every possible situation. The problem was, they had no idea what they were actually going to face. "Admiral on deck," someone called out as she entered the bridge. The crew snapped to attention, but she waved them back to work. There was too much to do for formal ceremonies. The main tactical display showed their route to the source of the alien transmission. It would take them through 3 star systems that humans had never visited, past planets that might contain hostile forces or alien allies. The journey itself would take 2 weeks at maximum speed. Lisa thought about humanity's long history of warfare. For thousands of years, humans had fought each other with increasing sophistication and brutality. They had learned to coordinate massive armies, to strike with precision, and to never leave an enemy with the ability to strike back. Every conflict had taught them new lessons about strategy, tactics, and the psychology of war. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity had become incredibly good at warfare precisely because they had spent so much time fighting themselves. Civil wars, world wars, colonial conflicts, each one had pushed military technology and strategy forward. Now all that knowledge would be tested against an alien enemy. "All fleet commanders are reporting ready for departure," Tom announced from his station. "Every ship is fully loaded, all crew are aboard, and the navigation computers are locked onto the target coordinates." Lisa looked one more time at the massive fleet spreading out beyond the viewports. In a few hours, this armada would jump to hyperspace and begin humanity's first offensive war against another species. There would be no turning back once they left Earth's solar system. "Signal all ships," she commanded. "Set course for the signal's origin point. Whatever's waiting for us out there just picked a fight with the wrong species." The fleet began to move, hundreds of ships turning in perfect formation toward their distant target. The jump from hyperspace always made Admiral Lisa Carter's stomach lurch, but this time was different. Instead of dropping into empty space, the human fleet materialized in the middle of what looked like a massacre. The bridge of the Retribution erupted in controlled chaos as officers scrambled to make sense of what they were seeing. "Contact! Multiple contacts," shouted Lieutenant Kelly Davis from the sensor station. "I'm reading 47 unknown vessels in attack formation around a third planet." Carter gripped the railing as she watched the tactical display populate with red dots. The alien ships looked nothing like human designs. They were angular and crystalline, almost like flying jewels that caught the light from the system's star. But their intentions were clear enough. Brilliant energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking the blue-green planet below in coordinated bombardment patterns. Commander Dave Wilson, her tactical officer, was already running threat assessments. "Admiral, those ships are definitely hostile. They're conducting orbital bombardment of what appears to be a populated world. I'm detecting return fire from the surface, but it's primitive. Energy weapons may be 50 years behind our technology." Through the main viewport, Carter could see the alien vessels up close for the first time. They moved in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls refracting the starlight into rainbow patterns. Despite their beauty, there was something cold and mechanical about how they operated. Each ship fired in precise intervals, methodically targeting what looked like cities and defensive installations on the planet below. "Ma'am, I'm picking up civilian communication channels from the planet," reported Communications Officer Beth Torres. "The translation computers are working on it, but it sounds like distress calls. Lots of them." Carter felt her jaw clench. These had to be the aliens who had threatened Earth. They were in the middle of attacking another world, probably softening it up before moving on to human colonies. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. "All ships, battle stations," she ordered. The klaxon began wailing throughout the fleet, and Carter could imagine 47,000 Marines and naval personnel preparing for humanity's first alien war. "Wilson, give me firing solutions on all hostile vessels." "Solutions locked and loaded, Admiral. All ships report ready for combat." Carter took one last look at the scene below. The alien ships had been bombarding that planet for who knows how long, killing civilians who couldn't fight back effectively. It reminded her of the worst human conflicts, the ones where superior technology was used to massacre defenseless populations. "All vessels, engage the enemy," she commanded. "Show them what human warfare looks like." What happened next would be talked about in military academies for centuries. The human fleet, designed and tested through thousands of years of warfare against their own species, unleashed everything they had learned about combat. The first salvo came from the long-range missile destroyers. Hundreds of nuclear-tipped warheads streaked across space, their targeting systems locked onto the alien vessels. The crystalline ships tried to evade, but their movements were predictable, almost ritualistic. They had probably been fighting the same way for generations against enemies who couldn't match their technology. But humans were different. Humanity had fought world wars, civil wars, and colonial conflicts that pushed military innovation to its absolute limits. Every weapon system had been tested in real combat. Every tactical doctrine had been written in blood. The missile impacts lit up space like a string of miniature suns. Several alien ships shattered immediately, their crystalline hulls no match for weapons designed to crack asteroid fortresses. The survivors tried to regroup, but the human fleet was already moving to Phase 2. Heavy cruisers powered up their rail guns, firing solid metal slugs at tremendous velocity. The projectiles punched through alien armor like it was made of glass. Meanwhile, fighter squadrons launched from the carriers, swarming around the remaining enemy ships like angry hornets. The aliens had expected an easy target, just like all their previous victims. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had turned warfare into a science. Human pilots used tactics developed in the Mars theater, coordinating attacks with split-second timing. The fleet commanders implemented strategies that had been refined through centuries of conflict. In 8 minutes, it was over. The 47 alien vessels were nothing but glowing debris scattered across space. Not a single human ship had been lost. On the planet below, the Zephyrian population watched their orbital displays in stunned silence. For decades, the Korthak raiders had been unstoppable. Their crystalline ships had brought terror to dozens of worlds, enslaving populations and stripping planets of resources. No one had ever been able to fight them effectively. Now, in less than 10 minutes, an unknown fleet had completely destroyed them. Veltar, the Zephyrian commander who had sent the original distress call, stared at his screens in disbelief. He had been hoping for help from their traditional allies. Instead, something far more dangerous had answered his call. The alien standing on the bridge of the Retribution looked nothing like what Admiral Lisa Carter had expected. Koldan was tall and slender, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the ship's lights. His large eyes held an expression that Carter recognized immediately, the look of someone carrying terrible news. The translation device crackled with static as Koldan spoke, his words coming through in careful, measured English. "Admiral Carter, there has been a terrible mistake. We never meant to threaten your people." Carter felt her stomach drop, but she kept her expression neutral. Around her, the bridge crew had gone silent, everyone straining to hear what the alien diplomat was saying. "Explain," she said simply. Koldan's hands trembled slightly as he activated a small device that projected a holographic star map. 6 months ago, our worlds came under attack by the Korthak Empire. They are raiders, slavers, destroyers of civilizations. We sent a distress call asking for military assistance from the Altarian Defense League. Lieutenant Colonel Mark Stevens was already pulling up the original transmission logs on his console. His face went pale as he ran the message through the translation matrix again, this time with proper context and linguistic references from Koldan's speech patterns. "Admiral," Stevens said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The original message, it wasn't a threat. Look at this." Carter walked over to Stevens' station, reading the retranslated message on his screen. The words that had seemed so menacing now told a completely different story. Phrases like, "your worlds will burn," were actually, "our worlds are burning." The "total annihilation approaches" was a description of what was happening to Koldan's people, not a threat against Earth. "We were asking for help," Koldan continued. "Our navigation systems were damaged in the first attacks. The message was supposed to reach our allies in the Altarian system. Instead, it somehow found its way to you." Carter felt like the deck was spinning beneath her feet. Humanity had just wiped out an entire alien fleet based on a translation error. Those crystalline ships they had destroyed weren't the aggressors, they were the raiders that Koldan's people had been fighting against. "The ships we destroyed," she said slowly. "Those were the Korthak." "A small raiding party," Koldan confirmed. "They have been terrorizing our colonies for months. We had given up hope that anyone would come to help us." The irony hit Carter like a physical blow. Earth's massive war fleet had accidentally stumbled into exactly the situation the aliens had been asking for help with. They had become the cavalry that Koldan's people had desperately needed. But before she could fully process what this meant, Captain Susan Hayes burst through the bridge doors. Hayes was normally calm and collected, but now her face was flushed and her eyes were wide with alarm. "Admiral, you need to see this right now," Hayes said, rushing to the long-range sensor station. "We've got massive contacts on the edge of the system. The computers are having trouble getting an exact count, but preliminary numbers show over 3,000 vessels inbound." Carter felt her blood turn to ice water. 3,000. "Yes, ma'am. They're big, heavily armed, and they're heading straight for us. Based on the energy signatures, they match the ships we just destroyed, but there are a lot more of them." Koldan's translator crackled as he spoke urgently. "The main Korthak battle fleet. They must have detected the destruction of their raiders. Admiral, you don't understand what you've done. The Korthak Empire has conquered dozens of star systems. Their main fleet has never been defeated." Carter looked around the bridge at her officers. Stevens was still staring at the corrected translation, probably calculating how many alien lives they had accidentally saved by destroying the raiders. Hayes was coordinating with the fleet's other sensor operators, trying to get accurate numbers on the incoming threat. The situation was insane. Earth's fleet had come here to fight what they thought were humanity's enemies, only to discover they had accidentally become the protectors of an innocent alien civilization. Now the real enemy was coming, and they were outnumbered almost 4-1. Carter thought about her options. They could retreat, jump back to Earth, and pretend this had never happened. The Korthak would probably finish destroying Koldan's people and then maybe never find Earth. It would be the safe choice, the smart choice. But as she looked at Koldan, saw the hope and terror mixed in his alien features, she knew what humanity's answer would be. "Well, gentlemen," she said, turning to face her officers. "We're already in this fight. Humanity doesn't leave jobs half-finished." She walked back to her command chair and activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter. We have incoming hostiles, over 3,000 strong. I know this isn't the fight we came here for, but it's the fight we've got." The real battle was about to begin. The Korthak Empire's main fleet arrived like a storm of crystalline death, their 3,000 ships dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. For over 2 centuries, this sight had meant the end for any civilization unlucky enough to see it. Entire star systems had surrendered without firing a shot when faced with such overwhelming numbers. Admiral Lisa Carter watched the enemy fleet deploy on her tactical screens, feeling her heart pound despite years of military training. The Korthak ships were massive, some of them larger than Earth's biggest dreadnoughts. Their crystalline hulls caught the light from Kepler 442's star, creating a beautiful but terrifying display that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. "Admiral, enemy fleet is assuming attack formation," reported Commander Dave Wilson from his tactical station. "They're moving slowly, probably expecting us to run." But Carter had no intention of running. Earth's fleet was outnumbered almost 4-1, but they had advantages the Korthak couldn't understand. Humanity had spent thousands of years fighting wars, learning from every defeat, and perfecting every aspect of combat. The aliens had grown lazy from centuries of easy victories against peaceful civilizations. The battle began at dawn on the second day, when long-range sensors detected Korthak scout ships probing the human fleet's defenses. Carter gave the order to engage, and the first phase of what would become known as the Battle of Kepler 442 commenced. The fighting was unlike anything in recorded history. The Korthak expected their enemies to break and scatter under the weight of their assault, just like every other species they had encountered. Instead, they found themselves facing tactical coordination that seemed almost supernatural. Colonel Frank Martinez commanded the Marine assault teams from the heavy cruiser New York. When his boarding parties breached Korthak vessels, they moved through the alien ships like a force of nature. Human Marines had trained for close-quarters combat in environments ranging from asteroid mines to space stations. The Korthak warriors, used to intimidating weaker species, had never faced enemies who fought with such disciplined ferocity. "These aliens don't know how to handle real resistance," Martinez reported over the comm as his teams cleared another Korthak ship. "They've been bullying peaceful worlds for so long, they forgot what happens when you pick on someone who fights back." In space, Captain Rob Thompson's fighter squadrons were rewriting the book on space combat. Thompson had studied every major battle in human history, from ancient naval warfare to the asteroid belt conflicts. His pilots used formation tactics that the Korthak had never seen before, swarming attacks that overwhelmed their defensive systems, coordinated strikes that targeted specific weak points, and defensive maneuvers that turned the alien superior numbers into a disadvantage. "The enemy pilots are predictable," Thompson reported as his squadron destroyed another cluster of Korthak fighters. "They rely on raw firepower and intimidation. They don't know how to adapt when their standard tactics don't work." The real genius behind the human victory was Commander Kate Phillips, who coordinated the overall fleet strategy from the tactical center of the Retribution. Phillips had spent her career studying asymmetric warfare, how smaller forces could defeat larger ones through superior planning and execution. She treated the battle like a chess match, moving human ships to exploit weaknesses in the Korthak formation. By the fourth day, the tide had clearly turned. The Korthak fleet, which had never faced serious resistance in 2 centuries of conquest, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy a quarter their size. Their commanders, bred for intimidation rather than tactical flexibility, couldn't adapt to human strategies. The 6th day brought the final phase of the battle. The surviving Korthak ships, less than a quarter of their original numbers, attempted a desperate retreat. But Admiral Carter had anticipated this move. Human ships had been positioned to cut off all escape routes, turning the retreat into a massacre. When the last Korthak vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the bridge of the Retribution fell silent. Around the fleet, 47,000 human military personnel tried to process what they had just accomplished. The Korthak Empire, which had terrorized 12 star systems and enslaved billions of beings, no longer existed. Koldan stood on the bridge beside Admiral Carter, his alien features showing a mixture of gratitude and terror. The Zephyrian delegation had watched the entire battle, seeing their longtime oppressors destroyed by beings they had accidentally summoned. "Admiral," Koldan whispered, his voice barely audible through the translator. "What have we brought into our galaxy?" Carter turned to face the alien diplomat, her expression serious. The weight of what had just happened was settling on her shoulders. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible, by completely destroying an empire that had seemed invincible. "The human race, friend," she said quietly. "Try not to give us a reason to regret coming here." Through the viewport, Earth's war fleet was already regrouping, their ships forming new defensive patterns around the damaged Zephyrian world. The humans had come to fight one war and ended up winning another. Now they had to decide what to do with their unexpected victory. The galaxy would never be the same.